This week, Apple released the first tvOS 9.2 beta for the new Apple TV, which includes pairing Bluetooth keyboards, app folders, a new app switcher UI, and a brand new podcast app. Let's start by taking a look at that new app. The app should look familiar if you already use Apple's podcast app on iPhone and iPad.
What's going on, everyone? This is Dom Esposito, and welcome to episode, I believe...
Just like on iOS 9, the new podcast app was organized by unplayed episodes, episodes that you subscribe to, featured episodes, the top charts, and search. The new podcast app for Apple TV is pretty well featured too. You can actually manage your podcast settings by feed, by episode, change how often the episode refreshes on that Apple TV. So it's pretty on par with the other versions of Apple's podcast app. One thing you won't see supported compared to older Apple TVs with the Apple Podcast app is any playback of video podcast. You actually won't even find them in search from my experience if you look for a video-only podcast. But the trend lately, I think, and from what I've seen, is that video podcasts really are ending up on YouTube and audio podcasts are more in iTunes, although iTunes on the desktop still shows video podcasts. And the Apple TV podcast app really is a standalone app. It could be your only version of the podcast app and not just a companion version. You can even subscribe to podcasts right from the Apple TV. And the browsing experience is really nice, especially in the big screen where you can see podcast artwork and all the big categories laid out very nicely. So even if you're not into podcast, I recommend checking out the new Apple Podcast app for Apple TV through the iOS 9.3 beta if you have access to that, because it really is a pretty nice app. And also subscribe to 9to5 Mac's Happy Hour podcast. Now, a couple of things you won't see with the podcast app on Apple TV, which is in beta. You won't see any top shelf art like other apps can get. And while Siri can talk to the podcast app on the iPhone and iPad, you won't see Siri support on the Apple TV yet, although it is still in beta, and I wouldn't be surprised if Apple brings Siri on the Apple TV up to par with Siri on other devices in the future. Now, aside from the podcast app, the new Apple TV OS 9.2 beta also lets you add folders to the home screen, which for me is awesome because I can put my family's games in one folder and just have the entertainment apps on the home screen. Now, this works very similar to the iPhone and iPad. You hold your finger over the button to make the apps go into jiggle mode, then you can move them left and right, and you want to drop the two channel icons onto each other to make a folder. tvOS also supports these really cool shortcuts. When you hold the play pause button while your app is in jiggle mode, you can move the app to a folder, any folder that you've created, create a new folder, or if it's any folder, move it back to the home screen. And once you make a folder, they're organized sort of by 3x3 with 9 apps, but you can actually put as many apps as you want into one folder, and then it just kind of moves vertically up and down in sort of an infinite folder. This would be a really nice UI for the iPad especially, I think, where the paginated view doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's cool to see it on tvOS first. Now, double-clicking the TV button on the Apple TV remote, the Siri remote, brings you to the app switcher, which on tvOS before now was like iOS 8, where you had full-screen views. On tvOS 9.2 beta, you get this card layout like you would see on iOS 9, so it's the same style as before. So fans of the old way, it's a little bit of a move back, I think, but it's at least the same as on all platforms now. Speaking of platforms being the same, now you can actually use Bluetooth keyboards for the first time, just like on the other Apple TVs in the past. This lets you navigate around the screen, type, you can even use the escape key to go back, the space bar to go forward. It's pretty useful. So that's what we have to look forward to with tvOS 9.2 beta when the official version is out later this year. Folders, podcast app, a new app switcher, and Bluetooth keyboard support finally. Still no iCloud photo library support, but this is a big step forward with being on parity with the last Apple TV.